So let's say that you have mastered all the basic strokes. You have done all the drills and you have practiced hand lettering until your brush pen phrase. When you get to that point where you are feeling pretty confident, you might be thinking, what can I actually do with my hand lettering? So today I have brought you into my home to show you one of my favorite ways to use my hand lettering. Now maybe you're like me and you like your hobbies to be purposeful. I love creating for the sake of creating, for the sake of relaxation, and just because it's fun. But at the end of the day, I also really like my hobbies to be something useful, something like baking or, things where at the end of the day, you have something that you're proud of and that you can actually use. Maybe you can gift it to somebody, maybe you can decorate your house with it. Whatever the case may be, I really love practical hobbies. So that is one of the reasons why I love hand lettering. And today I want to show you one of my very favorite ways to actually use my hand lettering. Now, before I get too far into it, my dog is at my feet and she will not stop snoring. So if you hear a little snoring puppy in the background, I apologize. But right now I am right outside my dining room and I want to show you a place where I put some hand lettering that I wasn't really expecting to put there. But once I put it there, I loved it sort of, but it needs to be redone. So let me explain, but first I will turn around and show you that hand lettering. Okay, so this is my formal dining room and we do not eat here every day. So sometimes I do hand lettering here, and when we had a snowstorm this year, I decided to film one of my Letter Together masterclasses here where we created a hand lettered art print that used a word of the year. So there's a big list of a bunch of different options for a word of the year and something to trace to practice that with your hand lettering. I chose the word create and I created this hand lettered art print and I styled it to take the picture for Letter Together, and I ended up really liking the way that it looked in here. And I've been trying to style this dining room for quite a while. So I loved it here, but the fact that it says create isn't like the most ideal thing to put in my dining room because, like I said, I do hand letter in here sometimes, but it is a dining room. So I thought that I would redo it so that I could keep the setup and keep the art print there, but put something that maybe fits in a little bit better with a formal dining room. So with that said, I'm going to give you a little tutorial of how I create hand lettered art prints and share some of my tips and tricks with you along the way. So here I have my supplies, and as you can see, there's a printout of that, which I will discuss later, but I am using for this Kansan Bristol paper. You can use whatever kind of paper you like the best. I just like to use this with a dip pen, but I've also used watercolor paper or some thinner papers as well. And then I have my printout here, and I've cut my Bristol paper down to size. I also have a ruler. This is nothing fancy, it's just a really cheap one from Target. And I have my dip pen, which I'm going to be using for this hand lettering. I also have my calligraphy ink, and the ink I'm using today is from Tom's Studio, which is also where I got this beautiful inkwell. The inkwell is totally not necessary. You can use any inexpensive plastic one, but I think this one's really fun, so I decided to grab that from Tom's Studio as well. Then I also have a pencil for my sketching. So the first thing that I'm going to do is kind of mark where my opening is for my frame. So I have my paper cut out to the size of like what I would put in the frame, but it has a mat in it. So there's only actually a little area for me to do my hand lettering. I think it's about 5 by 7, maybe a little bit less than that. So I'm just marking my area so that I can draw my rectangle and see where I actually have to hand letter. You could probably even go in a little bit smaller than your mat just so that you don't go too far to the edges, but I'm doing it pretty close to what my actual cutout is. So once I have my space for where I can do my hand lettering, I am going to go ahead and add some lines so that I can write straight and get it hopefully centered on my writing space. So this is where my printout came in. I took the scripture that I was planning to hand letter and I just typed it out on my computer and just chose a scripty type of font that I thought would be about equal in spacing to my hand lettering. So it does not matter what the script looks like. It doesn't matter if you don't like it. It's more just about the spacing, because this way I can kind of eyeball how many lines I'm going to need and about how many different words I'm going to put on each line so that I can get my spacing correct. So if you have watched a lot of my videos, you may know that when it comes to hand lettering, spacing is definitely my downfall. I have a really hard time getting words centered, and that's one reason why I love hand lettering on the iPad, because you can move things around. But when you are doing hand lettering like this, you really can't move things around too much, aside from your sketches, of course. And you definitely could just eyeball this when you are doing your sketch, but I find that this helps me to figure out just about how many lines that I need when it comes to spacing things out. So this did take a little bit of trial and error even with measuring, but it just gives me a little bit of a guideline going into my first sketch. And make sure to leave some room at the bottom and at the top. You may want to think about how much space you want at the bottom and the top and then kind of subtract that from your lines that you're drawing. Otherwise, if you put your first line right at the top and then you letter on it, your hand lettering might go straight to the top of your writing space or straight to the top of your paper, which might not look as centered as you'd like it to. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is freehand sketch out my hand lettering with a pencil. Now this is not really for me about perfecting my words and my letters. Sometimes you might see that I put like a loop in one letter and then the next time I did that letter I might not have put a loop. So it's not really about getting it perfect. And I'm not exactly tracing each letter. It's more just about getting the spacing right because like I said, that is my struggle spot. And so I just want to see where I have room to write. But I know that when I hand letter over the top of it, things are going to shift and that's okay. I'm just going to erase those pencil marks when I'm completely done. So I would not be too much of a perfectionist about this sketching portion. I'm sketching a lot more quickly than I really hand letter, and that's okay. It's just because I'm just trying to get the spacing right on the paper. And as I get into my hand lettering with my dip pen, I will get into a better flow of hand lettering, and my words and my letters will probably look a little bit different. Quickly rough sketching something is just quite a bit different of a process than when you take your time to slowly hand letter and think through your strokes and get in that creative flow. So I just know going into it that my pencil sketches will not be perfect. And here comes the fun portion where I get to do the hand lettering using my dip pen and my ink. This is the time for that creative flow, and this is something that I really enjoy. And while I love to see the final product, this part is pretty relaxing as well for me. You will see that I have a little bit of a space where I have a little bit more ink come out than I would like to. That just happens. I could have redone this, or I could also, which maybe I will still try this later, tried to use a sand eraser to scratch it out and redo that little area. But honestly, because this is just for my own home and for my dining room, I am not going to be a perfectionist about this. I know that I shared this earlier, but I have a newborn and we have a lot going on, so I'm just not going to be a perfectionist about this or it will never get done. So maybe in the future I will redo it to get that little spot out, but today just is not the day, or when I filmed this was not the day. But if you do have that problem where you have a little bit of a mistake, you can try a sand eraser just to lightly take off that mistake. But the sand eraser does come with its own risks too, so just keep that in mind, but that is an option if you want to test something like that out. If you want to create this hand lettered art piece, I think what I'll do is go ahead and make a printable practice sheet for you. So if you want to download it and print it yourself and practice this scripture with me, I will put that in the resource library on my website and I will link that in the description box below. But if you have not been there before, I have a free resource library on my website where I just have free hand lettering printables that you can use to practice your different types of hand lettering. There are some that are for brush pens and there's some that are for dip pen hand lettering. So I'll link that below. But you can also find it at howtohandletter.com/resource library. And if you are not familiar with using a dip pen for hand lettering, I actually have a free printable in the resource library on that goes along with a video that I made that is, I think it's called How to Get Started with Dip Pen Hand Lettering or something like that, but I will link it at the end of this video as well as in the description box below if you want more of a beginner take on how to get started with dip pen calligraphy. So the last step in this process is erasing those pencil marks. I did not do it here while I was filming because while I am always so tempted to just get it erased right away, I know that I need to be patient and wait. So at the risk of erasing too soon and ruining my whole piece by smearing the ink on my page, I just decided to leave it for a little bit and erase later. But here is the finished product, and it really is that simple to take your skills in hand lettering and turn it into a piece of art for your home or to gift or something like that. So I hope this was helpful for you. And again, if you want to find that printable and practice and put this up in your own home, you can find that printable at howtohandletter.com/resource library. Or if you want to learn more about dip pen hand lettering, here is that video. I will link it on the screen here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you over in that next video.